Welcome to another episode of Threes and TDs. Today we had the Dan Morgan presser in terms of what's going to happen with the Carolina Panthers before the draft. We got some nuggets, so I thought we'd talk about just what went down in terms of the press conference. This was let's actually look back and look at everything that was said. I was kind of tweeting out as it was happening, and so essentially the first thing that happened is Dan Morgan said he likes where his board is at and is ready for all scenarios that would present themselves at pick 19. Dan Morgan says you don't know what guys are going to fall and we have to be ready for all scenarios. The real theme of this was the fact that he is not going to corner himself anywhere. As much as Panthers fans want Casey Concepcion, as much as Panthers fans want somebody like Omar Cooper Jr., as much as Panthers fans just want to do whatever it is that they want to do, Dan Morgan has been pretty consistent in terms of what he wants. And what he wants is he wants a BPA mindset. They're going to get the best player available at all costs. The other thing that was really, really interesting in terms of what Canales said when it comes to this, not Canales, but what Dan Morgan said when it comes to this is that they are not going to push a position just because it's a position of need. And I thought that was really interesting. Dave Canales said, the reason I say Dave Canales earlier is because Dave Canales said earlier, maybe 2 weeks ago at the owners' meetings, that he doesn't believe in just drafting for depth at 19. So Dan Morgan was asked about it, and this is specifically what he said.
I think you can necessarily something about at 19, he doesn't think you can necessarily draft for depth. What does that mean to you?
I think, I understand what Coach is saying in terms of obviously you want your first round pick to be able to come in and contribute immediately. So yeah, I'm kind of with him on that. You want your first round pick to play, but there's different scenarios to where, maybe it takes a guy a little longer to develop. And he may not contribute right away, but with some of the picks at different positions, it may take, a little longer for those guys to develop for sure.
It's a really interesting comment there by him, because he's essentially saying we are okay with drafting a player that doesn't start. And if you remember correctly, the thing that Dan Morgan has said consistently is that they are not going to force a position. They are not going to put themselves in a position where they have to draft a wide receiver. They're not going to put themselves in a position where they have to draft a specific kind of player. So to me, this is very, very good. This is what the approach has been all along. There were a couple of other of comments that I thought was really interesting. This is Joe Person, writer for The Athletic, saying, essentially asking Morgan, would you be okay with taking a wide receiver for 3 years in a row? This is what Dan Morgan had to say about it.
No, I think, with anything, we're going to take the best player. So if the best player we feel is at 19, I wouldn't hesitate to draft another wideout. I think there's a rule that says you can't draft a wide receiver in 3 years in a row. So I'm not really going to, I'm not going to box us in and set it.
I think you've had several in the building. What do you think of that group?
So there again, we have a situation in which he is essentially saying he's not going to corner himself into drafting a specific kind of player. And if the best player available is a wide receiver, then that's what it's going to be. Once again, Dan Morgan is not revealing too much. And part of me, as a Panthers analyst, as somebody that has been a fan of this team for a very long time, I like it. I like the idea that he doesn't want to give away too much when it comes to this, because you don't want to give teams a certain advantage of what's going to happen. If you remember correctly, 2 years ago with Xavier Legette was essentially going on interviews and saying, oh yeah, they told me that they're going to get me if they're there. This is a very different approach. Last year and this year. Remember, last year everybody thought Jalen Walker was going to be the pick. not so much this year. So he was also asked specifically, I thought that this was interesting because he was also asked specifically about what Brandon Tillis had said about who's your guy, who do you think? And he said, our goal every year is to be a contender. And very, very interesting comment in terms of how he sees them competing this year. And, just really, really interesting quotes. If we go look at Mike Kay and what Mike Kay said, who is, the beat reporter for the Charlotte Observer, one of the things that he said here, so this is the comment that we already shared in terms of Dave Canales' comments and not believing in depth. But there was another comment that was really, really interesting in terms of the defensive line, that he said the defensive line was top heavy this year. So I know there's a lot of Panthers fans that, they want Clemson players. If you remember correctly, the Panthers have not selected, the Panthers have not selected a Clemson player in their whole history. They've selected a lot of South Carolina players, but not a Clemson player. So yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting if they choose to get a Clemson player or they don't. But a lot of different quotes that were really, really interesting in terms of what's going to happen. The other thing too, Dunk here said Dan Morgan pretty much walked back Canelo's comments about not drafting for depth. Says obviously you want your first round to contribute immediately, but says that there are some scenarios where positions take more money to develop than others. I tweeted out in a response that said a reminder that Dan Morgan said that the Panthers brass did what they did in free agency so that they could take best player available in the draft. Depth or not, they're going to take the best player available. The screenshot is from an article that the Carolina Panthers actually put out after the free agency signings. And here's the quote: I felt like having the depth and frontline players that we added in free agency, I think really gives us a lot of flexibility heading into the draft to draft the best player available, Morgan said. So I'm just excited about the direction that we're headed, that the franchise is headed, and we're on to the draft now. That's another exciting time where we can add really good quality players to our roster, and we're ready to go. So once again, it's the same things that are being said over and over and over again, which in my opinion is what good franchises do. Good franchises do not draft for need. Good franchises draft best player available. So it looks like that's what's going to happen. I know, especially if you're on X, there's a lot of back and forth among Panthers fans about, wide receiver, offensive tackle. It's really, really weird to me. If I can be honest for a second, it's really, really weird to me that there's a portion of the fan base that does not want an offensive tackle. It literally doesn't make sense. We are very, very old at that position, and we need to get younger at that position. Like, that position is a position that needs to get younger. So I don't really understand the urge to have to get a wide receiver. But regardless of that, offensive tackle might be there, wide receiver might be there, potentially Dylan Thieneman might be there. So we'll see what happens. But that's all I got for y'all today. Just wanted to give you all an update on the Dan Morgan presser. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see y'all in the next one.